my beautiful people. I go by the name Shota Deolusegun. In today's live session, I want to share with us what gravity is. So I'm going to actually, run a review on a particular video titled "What is Gravity" by deGrasse Tyson. So that video is what we're going to dissect during this live session, and after the whole video then I can give my own opinion. So in this video I'm going to share with you what quantum gravity is based on my novel discovery, and then how that is related to classical gravity. So it's going to be an insightful video, and I believe it's going to be informative as well. So now let's dive deep into it.
Our talk. I don't know.
So did I accidentally ask a deeper question than I meant to?
Yeah, no, you were meant to ask deep questions.
Apparently I was.
In life. So, to say, what is it? I think Einstein, in an Einsteinian answer, we would say gravity is the curvature of space and time. Will follow the curvature of space-time, and we interpret that as a force of gravity. That's probably the best answer I can give to a "what is gravity" question, or "why is there gravity?" That's the best I can do there. I think that's a good start. And I can also say that Einstein noted that matter tells space how to curve, space tells matter how to move.
Say that again.
Isn't that beautiful?
It is. No, I want to get that. I like that. That's a t-shirt.
Matter and energy will curve the fabric of how to move in the curvature of space itself. And so Einstein juxtaposed those in a poetic phrase where he said, matter tells space how to curve, space did I get that right? Yes. Matter tells space how to curve, space tells matter how to move. It's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Okay, that's it. Wow. All right, that is it. Now it is time for my own opinion. So right there, deGrasse Tyson said that matter tells space how to curve, and then space tells matter how to move. You understand? So basically it was talking about the curvature of space around an heavy object. You understand? So that is by using the general relativity of Albert Einstein. Okay, so now general relativity is the current gravity you understand? So unlike the Sir Newton idea, based on his own idea, he said gravity is nothing but a force. But now Einstein said that is not so, that gravity is the curvature of space and time. Good. Now, on this particular topic of gravity, one has to be very careful, because gravity affects everything in the universe, and it's kind of, but one thing I really don't understand is that people do talk about gravity as something that actually, causes mass convergence. And, at times they refer to that classical gravity as being something, as a free fall as well. So now, the first thing I just want to clarify is free fall, mass convergence. I did the same thing. When there is this inverse movement to gravitational field. So when you're moving inversely to gravitational field, yes, you will actually feel the exertion of gravitational field, and that is the sensation of mass accumulation. You understand? So when you are in that free fall phase, you're not going to experience any kind of exertion of gravitational field, because you are actually traveling, in that direction of gravity. And so that free fall, the way I see it, there is nothing impeding your movement, and it's more or less like having a kind of decay mechanism, but that decay mechanism is not going to be, reflective on you as your mass was being decayed, but basically it's just going to be free fall as, having a kind of decay mechanism. And you will see what I mean by that as we go deeper into this image that I intend to use. So now, this image is what I want to use. So now when you look at the title of the image that we have right here, that is the classical gravity versus quantum gravity, where people have been working seriously on how to get quantum gravity. So believing that quantum gravity is going to be like a unified gravitational mechanism that can actually explain both classical gravity and the kind of gravity that we should have at quantum level. But basically, based on my novel research discovery, I realized that quantum gravity, form of classical gravity. So it is hard to, really say this, but it is not even hard when you consider the fact that the spot of this quantum gravity is so tiny relative to the classical gravity, and having it to be that tiny, then it's just going to be it's not really going to be that elaborated, such that its effect could really reflect on at classical level. So that is just it. But basically, by the time you to see the visual representation of this quantum gravity in relation to classical gravity, then you'll be able to understand what it's all about, and then you can judge too. So now I want us to have a cursory look on this image. Right here is known as time energy wave model, and this is what I've been using to visually illustrate the reality of the universe based on my discovery. Well, I have two research publications on peer-reviewed journals. Peer-reviewed journal rather. So I have the first one to be the theory of the universe. So anything you need to know about time, you can get it there, and there is where I derive this formula of everything. And then the second one is seeing the anatomy of quantum gravity through formula of everything, and there is where I apply formula of everything, and then get the solution, and even get some other information as regards blue is the trajectory of time, and that is inversely related to the trajectory of energy, which we have in red. Now what that is telling us is that by the time we apply formula of everything, don't forget that formula of everything is dt dm equal to capital U m plus 4m. So I just have to say this capital U boldly, because I don't know, maybe it's a network. At times I realize that when I call that formula of everything, the capital U is often being deleted, I don't know, and I know that in that video I called capital U, so I usually have it to be capital, then it will just link it to M. I'm saying capital M, so it is dt dm equal to capital U m plus 4m. So now by having dt dm, that shows that we're going to have curvature of time relative to inside the curvature we have this nested linear solution, which is the capital U. By the time we apply that formula, then we eventually get the derivation of this equilateral triangle that we have. And then I realized that at the present phase, the trajectory of time, which in this case, when you look at, I want you to look at the blue curvature region where we have the bigger circle. So the bigger circle that we have there is classical arbitrary suspension. Now for any shape to be instantiated, there must be this convergence around its edges before that shape can actually be instantiated. So then when you look at the equilateral triangle, the first one that is being formed, we have the blue big circle, which is classical arbitrary suspension. In fact, that convergence that we have there is known as energy density. And so right at the bottom we have another suspension. So now look at the Big Bang of time linear trajectory and energy linear trajectory, where we have the energy density. There we also have energy density. So we usually have this convergence around the edge to instantiate the shape. And so right at that bigger blue circle, what we have there is a free fall, because energy is actually at the point where it is so weak. You understand? Because when you look at it, the trajectory of energy is towards the low energy state. And so we have it like that for energy to be low, because basically we have the scaling of time, which is wide, and relative to energy we resort to energy being low. So by having such low energy state, then we can actually have free fall right from the bigger blue circle down. Then we realize that we have this free fall, which is the classical gravity, right from that big blue circle down to the big red circle. So that is the extreme end, the bottom end of that equilateral triangle. But immediately after that convergence, now what happens is that by the virtue of that free fall, traveling through the time trajectory, we now have spontaneous symmetry breaking at that quantum level. And so by having that spontaneous symmetry breaking, then what happens is there is this compacted equilateral triangle right immediately after that big red circles convergence, and that is, we can call that, quantum nucleus. Why the blue compacted equilateral triangle right around the curvature of time trajectory down to the big blue circle we serve as classical nucleus. Well, don't be surprised that I call one quantum nucleus and the other classical nucleus, because what we have right there is that if you look at the value that we have tracing the quantum linear trajectory, where I have 5.7 times 10 raised power minus 32, that value is smaller than the mass watt of electron, which is 9.109 times 10 raised to power minus 31. And because of that, it means that the instantiation of electron will be right inside the quantum nucleus. So when I say quantum, something like that. So this time energy wave model is just to model reality of the universe, the mechanics of, it means that we would have it to be in form of circle. So it means that we would definitely have it in form of circle. So if we have it in form of a hole, then it will serve as a positive charge, which simply means that it's a positron in that sense. So if we should have a positron down here at quantum level, then definitely we're going to have electron right here. So we usually have instant flipping of particles. We have instant flipping at the present phase, because the present phase is the phase of reality, because by having the vertical from down to the quantum realm, that trajectory is a static and undulating field because of the elongation. So because of the elongation that we have right there, so we have it to be field, and I call it reality field. So now what happens is we have free fall right from the classical realm down to the suspension of quantum realm, free fall. But right inside the nucleus we have mass convergence, and that mass convergence serves as resistance to the free fall of the classical gravity. So definitely right from that top down to the red suspension, we have that free fall, and that is the classical gravity. And so you can see what I have right there, which now right at the suspension, quantum suspension, to the edge of energy curvature, we have quantum gravity. So quantum gravity, you can see here, what did I put there? Quantum gravitational resistance. So now the reason we don't usually have the effect of quantum gravitational resistance at quantum level is for the fact that it is so tiny, and so it's not going to have that elaborated effect on classical gravity. But I'm telling you now that quantum gravity is an inverse of classical gravity. So now by having that mass convergence, we have that mass convergence, and that mass convergence could be the mass convergence of proton or neutron. As electron is not being defined, it means that there is something that we still need to get connected to for electron to be defined. So now like when you look at this whole thing, that at that present phase we have the intense curvature of energy, and so if energy must negotiate that curvature, there is going to be this constantly accelerating momentum. So because we have compacted the equilateral triangle right there, now by that virtue of acceleration there will be excess energy. Equilateral triangle that we have is 2D, then the higher dimension will be 3D. So 2D can only attain its full, and so we have this interlocking of dimensions, and that is what I call signature of Almighty God in the universe. Because basically if we must always get connected to higher dimension before we realize our full potential, then what that is telling us is that every human in the universe is not, every human in the universe is not independent. So it means that we depend on some other things. So it's more or less like tapestry of network. It's the whole universe is a tapestry of network of we humans being. Basically, if we usually have that phenomenon of getting connected to higher dimension, then it means there will always be something that will be higher to connect to, and then the peak, or the highest thing to connect to, what do you think that would be? So let me not go further on that, but the moment we now have that standing wave, standing wave 2 is a kind of wave that is static. It is not directional. So that would connect us, and the essence of having this static trajectory is for that elongation to be synchronized, such that the particle that we want to connect to will get that position. Now that is the whole essence of the whole mechanism, because we usually have this tilt effect of time peregrination, either to the past as we have momentum away from the real classical mass, or either to the future classical mass. And by having that tilt effect of time, then it means that there is no balance. So the momentum is not balanced. So quantum momentum is not in balance with classical momentum, and because of that we can't get reality. So we only get reality at a point where the quantum momentum is at par spot, like it tallies with the momentum of the classical, such that we have vertical line. So right now, based on that, we now know what quantum gravity is, and then we know what classical gravity is. So if I'm to go back to what deGrasse Tyson said, he said mass tells time space to curve, you understand, and time space tells mass how to move. So when you look at this whole diagram, you can see that where we have the energy convergence, there is this intense curvature of time. So now basically what we have close to time wave is energy density. So as we have mass convergence, it seems as if there is reaction of such action which translates to energy density. So then it shows that it is this energy density that causes the curvature. And so indeed we can see that we have curvature right there. That is at classical level. At quantum level, we can see that but the real quantum mass is outside the curvature. So basically, that mass convergence must be injected. The real quantum mass must be injected into the system before we could have momentum into the black hole. So now, what we get connected to will be instantly flipped to the positron, such that this empty hole will now be converted to electron. And since the positron is of the higher dimension, so there is not going to be this collision that would, consume both. So the injection will result to energy that can actually propel momentum into the black hole. And then in the black hole, we see that the trajectory of energy, look at the red line, the trajectory of energy is continuously increasing. And so that is entropy for you. So we could have radiation in that sense. And by having that continuous increase of energy, it means that positron is operational in the black hole. So so electron is not being defined. I think electron is not being defined well when at work, you understand? So basically, it's until when we get connected to the positron of the higher dimension that we get the true instantiation of electron. And if we should have electron right at the quantum level, then definitely we're going to have this swap such that the electron that we initially have here will be converted to positron. So we must always have inverse relationship. And when you look at this time energy wave, now don't be, it's an inverse version of classical gravity. So we have this tiny resistance as quantum gravity. And then how can I explain this? How can I explain it in such a way that we'll be able to understand? Let's look at that free fall phenomenon for instance. So let's say we have somebody falling from a great height. And as that person is falling, yes, there will be nothing, resisting the fall. Good. So now, let's now say that the person has a face cap on his head. And then the person took off the face cap and then placed that face cap in the air. In relativity, he placed the face cap in the air relative to himself. Now that face cap will always be suspended where that person put it, and both of them will be coming down. Now for us to have such suspension, it means that there is this hidden resistance which is not, so elaborated to have impact on that classical gravity, which is the free fall that we have. But we can actually get to now see the true color of that resistance when there is relativity in place. So the moment that person, took off the face cap and then placed it in the air, we'll be able to see that resistance, because the cap would move. We as well have the energy density to cause the curvature, but basically the real quantum mass world is outside. So what we could have called the real mass world would have been this O that we have. But when you now reiterate the application of formula of everything such that into the black hole and then get to the core singularity of black hole, the answer we get is asymmetric. So we get -1. gravitational phase inside the black hole to be in form of decaying, decaying of mass worth. So the tiny decay factor of decaying factor at classical level. So we could call that butterfly effect. And so we can actually translate the free fall that we have at the present phase to be factor. But basically we're not going to have, that decaying effect on the real mass. We have the energy density right there. The decaying effect will only be on the energy density, because it's not that we're actually moving, at a higher speed than the speed of gravity. If it were to be that we are actually moving at decaying effect. But at the present phase, such decaying mechanism will not have any effect on the real mass visible. And so we know that for us to have free fall, then it means that the falling is void of any resistance. But the moment we have relativity in place, we can see the hidden resistance of quantum gravity right in the classical free fall. So that is what I will have to say about gravity. I believe it's quite insightful and informative. So gravity is a tough topic, and it's something that affects matter in the universe. So it's something that we need to know. And so now, by unifying quantum mechanics to classical mechanics, we now have the picture. We know what quantum gravity is. Now when you look at that, when you look right inside the black hole, then you see that we have entropy, because the energy keeps on increasing, and that could be likened to entropy. And then that would generate radiation. And there is a point where we now have, because right where we have the entropy, we have the trajectory of energy to be ahead of time. Now, in that cosmological space, we usually have, the trajectory of time to be ahead of energy in the expanding phase. And that is why we could have you can see that the trajectory is, gravitational field will actually be towards the center. And you see that in classical mechanics, in classical realm of that time energy wave model, we are traveling away from that gravitational effect. So now, at that vertical line where we're now moving in the same direction of gravity, we have the free fall. You understand? So basically that is it. Gravitational phase it to be the trajectory of, there we have that trajectory to be the constant speed of gravity. Trajectory, that is what I would just say. But the real gravitational phase is where we now have that free fall, and inside the black hole it is translated to be the phase where we have decaying of classical mass worth. So that decaying of classical mass worth was actually caused, or is rather caused by the tiny effect of decay at quantum level, which is -1 at power of electrons worth, and that relates to about 2 billion watts of decay at classical level. So we could call that butterfly effect, like I said the other time. And then where we now have the neutron star, then we have this flipping mechanism. We now have it to be -1 to +1.1, which of not having the whole base value of electron to be decayed, then it simply means that electron while it's empty. You know that connect with me, you can actually do so by searching for Shotade Olusegun on LinkedIn, and then on YouTube you can just connect to me at Shotade Olusegun, or to me at Shotade A1. Then on Instagram you can connect to me at Shorixnoni, which is SHORIXNONI. And then on TikTok it is still Shorixnoni, which is, you know, what I just spelled out for you. You understand? So that is it. Thank you for your time. God bless you.